Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Jen Stelzer and I'm very excited to be sharing my love of year-round bicycling with you today. It's just going to take a sec here for me to share my screen. Depending on how many people we get today, you can just, sorry, I want to make sure I share the right screen. That seems important. You can probably just put your questions in the chat. We have Stefan behind the scenes monitoring our chat today. And then that way I can kind of address things as we go along. I think that's probably the easiest. So, okay, so Stefan, can you see my screen all right?
I can, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this is called Extend Your Cycling Season. We call it that because we used to have a workshop called Winter Cycling and everyone ran away and hid and never came because they thought they would have to cycle in a blizzard. So we're not about cycling in blizzards here at Enviro Center. I am all about bicycling on beautiful, wonderful, cold, crisp winter days and not on days when really just no one should be out in the streets. So I am not a winter warrior. I am a 50-year-old mom, and I've been riding my bike year-round for pretty much my whole life because no one ever really told me not to. I've been a speaker at the Winter Cycling Congress, and I wrote a handy little guide to winter cycling that's been shared by municipalities across Canada. So we will share that with you at the end of the presentation. I do have a BA in geography and all that fun stuff, and I love programs that influence citizen behavior. And I am also the director of community sustainability programs here at Enviro Center. So my department gets to kind of just do all the things we love to do. We try to get people to get out in their communities more, to live more lightly, and to get around with active transportation when they can. So for those of you that don't know us, I work for an environmental nonprofit called Enviro Center. We've been around for about 20 years, and our mission is to provide people, communities, and organizations with practical solutions to lighten their environmental impact in lasting ways. And yes, you can do that just by riding your bike, which is pretty cool. We do have 4 areas that we focus on. We focus on green homes. That's a big part of our business, is home retrofits and making sure people's homes are insulated and cozy and saving energy. We have a green business department where we help large employers and large businesses and small businesses work on their sustainability goals. We do a lot of work within green transportation and green lifestyle in cities, so working on waste and stormwater management and basically every aspect of people's lives one way or another. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk a little bit about, well, realistically, we're going to talk about whatever you guys want to know about winter cycling. But without questions, the presentation is going to focus on the bike, the route planning, some of the benefits, some skills that are kind of nice to know, a few little tips here and there, and a bit to do with maintenance, just so that you keep your bike lasting a little bit longer. So we'll kind of chunk this out into sections, and I'll stop from time to time and check in with Stefan. But if you have something that you don't understand or need clarification, I think there's 9 of us here today. You can probably just unmute and go, "Hey, Jen, what do you mean?" And I'll clarify it. So firstly, let's talk about winter in general. So it's not as bad as you think. In non-COVID times, people come from all over the world to Ottawa in the winter to enjoy our amazing, beautiful winter city. We only have about 12 days a year of snowfall over 5 centimeters in Ottawa. It feels like winter never ends in Ottawa, but when you actually break down the math, we actually have about 12 big snow days. We do have at least 1 centimeter of snow on the ground on average for about 115 days of the year. So if you're like, I don't bike in winter, that means you're not biking for about the third of the year because there's snow on the ground. Now, when we say there's snow on the ground, it doesn't mean it's on the road. It's often on lawns and green spaces, and the roads have been cleared. So we do truly often see clear roads, snow on the green spaces. And the average daytime high is about -4 in the winter in Ottawa. And that's actually really comfortable once you get moving. So again, we're human beings, and human beings tend to remember the most traumatic. We remember like the very best things and the very worst things. And no one ever says, oh, I had a perfectly average bike ride to work today. But if something awesome happens or something terrible happens, like, bro, we're going to scream that from mountaintop. And same thing kind of happens with winter. You don't kind of remember the -4 days. You remember the -30 days when your eyelashes froze and your skin stuck together and your tongue got stuck to a pole because you were dared to do that. So those are the things you remember, but in reality, it's not actually that bad. So why bike year round? Well, firstly, it's a nice way to get around. No matter the season, it's actually really enjoyable. It's always better than sitting in traffic. It's always nicer, in my opinion, to be outside enjoying the space of our city rather than being stuck on the 417. It's great exercise. It's super convenient. You don't have to shovel off the top of your car and clean off your windshield and sit in there and idle for 3 minutes to warm up. It's just kind of ready. It saves you money. It's of course good for the environment, which is why we care about it here at Enviro Center. And cycling creates really vibrant streets and neighborhoods. People who bike or walk in their communities tend to be much more connected with their communities and their neighbors and enjoy where they live much more than people that are constantly hopping in and out of cars. So let's start with the bike. The bike. All right. So firstly, I have sort of like 2 things I need to say out loud that either you're going to run away and hate me, but you don't really need a fancy fat bike. In fact, if you're going to be biking in the city, you don't really want a fancy bike because Salt eats bikes, and Salt doesn't care if your bike is a junker that costs $75 that only has 2 gears that works, or if it's a $3,000 beautiful brand new fat bike that's super awesome and fun to ride. So if you're thinking of biking in the city on city infrastructure with Salt around you, remember, Salt doesn't care how much your bike costs. It's going to eat it, okay? So in the case of winter commuting type bikes, less is more. If you want to go play on the it's not called the SGM. If you want to go play on the Kitchissippi Trail, or if you want to go play in the snow and have a lot of fun, and you can dedicate your fat bike to being in places it's not going to have a lot of salt, they are super ridiculous amounts of fun. But I just want to really, really make you understand you don't want to use your fancy road bike. You don't want to use your fat bike for getting around. Less is more. You want something comfortable. So my winter bike, I always make sure that my seat's a little bit lower. My feet can be on the ground. My center of gravity is a little bit lower when I'm riding my winter bike. I'm a big fan of used bikes for winter bikes. Of course, right now, the bike market is so bonkers, just finding any bike is really, really hard. But definitely the best resource in the whole entire world is like your Aunt Martha, who has a bike from the 80s that she hasn't ridden for 20 years in her garage. Like, reach out to your social media network and just say, does anyone have an okay-ish rideable bike? And that's usually where I get my bikes, is just from somebody's relative from a garage that hasn't been ridden in a long time. Aluminum wheels are nice because they don't rust, the spokes don't rust. They're a little bit easier to maintain in the winter. You want flat pedals. That's really important. You don't want any clip-in pedals for winter bikes. Basically, you want the simplest bike you can find. Places, any moving parts that don't need to be there, get rid of them. Flat pedals aren't complicated. You really want to make sure your feet can come off those pedals when needed. You really want fenders. If you're on social media, you might see that there's a whole bunch of anti-fender people. I'm not sure why, but they must have very messy behinds, because fenders are your friend in the winter time. It's really messy and mucky and slushy. And when you go to work or you go out in the early morning, it can be nice and cold and clean. But by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if you're on any of this infrastructure we're about to talk about, it's a mucky mess. And fat bikes, they're fun, but maybe not for actual winter. Are there any questions about bikes before we're going to move on to a bit of gear things?
Just a couple comments in the chat here. Thanks for the session. I'm looking forward to hearing what routes are relatively well maintained. So we will provide a great resource for that. And then Simon mentioned probably only 10% of the days I don't bike in the winter, which kind of goes to what you were saying. And they also mentioned getting an old mountain bike is the best, and probably have to replace some of the drivetrain parts every 2 to 3 years, which, yeah, you can probably extend that if you really go above and beyond. But if you're using a used bike, that's probably your best bet anyways.
Yeah, mountain bikes are great. Although my husband and I do have this, like, I use an old city bike and he uses an old 10-speed bike. He's of that guild, but whatever. Use a bike you're comfortable riding. So a couple of things just to remember. Now, even if we're biking this time of year, there's no snow on the ground, you can still be out there biking until really, you can bike to Christmas dinner, really. There's not going to be that much snow on the ground, but it is getting dark really early, and it's dark much later. So it's really important to have lights, backup lights, keep your lights. I am a big fan of daytime running lights on bicycles, especially in the winter. We have daytime running lights on our cars, and they're pretty big. I really feel like, you know, sort of two things. Why not? It's easy. It costs the same. Not everyone is expecting as many bikes out there this time of year, so we really do have to make sure we are seen. We want to let drivers notice us, and there's really no reason not to put your back light on if you're biking even in the daytime, especially your back light. Front lights are nice to be able to see. Front and back is ideal. Definitely your back, even in the daytime. In the evening and nighttime, you want to have both your front and back lights work on. So your lights, if you're using a battery or a USB charged lighting system, they're not going to last as long on really cold winter days. So try to make sure. I do have a little weirdo trick. So, you know, we have those cheapy lights that you can get. I always keep those on an inside pocket of my coat, so that if my lights that I normally use fade out, I have a set that are basically being kept warm by my body heat, and I know that they're going to last me the way home. So just really remember, don't be surprised when your lights might burn out in like 10 kilometers on a really cold day. So not just a battery thing, or just important to know. So what to wear? So most of the time, what you need to wear is similar to what you need to do to walk in the same type of weather, or shovel your driveway. You're going to be active, so you want to make sure that you're dressed a little cooler, because you do warm up. And, you know, it takes me usually about 4 blocks to get to, oh my gosh, I'm not freezing. So when I first get outside, I'm like, I just want to put on all my clothes. And 3 blocks later, I'm unzipping everything in the world. So really just know that you're going to, sorry, my phone is dingling away over, it's driving me crazy here. There we go. Yeah, just make sure that you dress cooler than you think you need to, because you'll warm up. Layers are really great. Layers are really important because the weather and temperature changes a lot more this time of year. You can start your morning at -10 and be coming home in the afternoon at +3. So it's really nice to have sort of a windproof layer. I just have like a wool and long sleeve undershirt that I wear, and under, like, just regular undershirt under that. And that's pretty much what I bike in most of the time, unless it's a very, very cold day. Ventilation is, of course, very nice too. You're going to get dirty. So if you are a, big fashionista, you may as well just sign off, because you're going to look pretty weird sometimes. You're going to need some waterproof pants. You're going to need a windproof, waterproof jacket. You're going to need some cozy mitts and boots. I don't have special boots. I just wear my winter boots, or I wear just my Blundstones and wool socks kind of thing. Windproof is really important though, especially, I don't know if you can see me in the little box, but you get a lot of wind on the front part of your fingers here. And so you want windproof mittens or gloves that you love, but you have to make sure you can properly use your gears and your brakes. So sometimes, like big ski gloves, they're too bulky kind of, and you don't have very good control over brakes and things. So they do make special ones. You might be able to see, maybe I can put on my little laser pointer here. You can see these gloves have a little finger, and that's quite helpful for changing gears on some bicycles. So I have a pair of sheepskin gloves that I wear. They're really furry inside. They're completely windproof, and I've been using the same ones for ever and ever. So nothing special. You don't need high-tech gear. Now, glasses. Glasses are tricky because your eyes do get very cold. So you want to wear sunglasses, or you want to wear clear glasses. And if you already wear glasses, well, then you're already set up, but they do get steamed up sometimes. So then you end up wearing them a bit down your nose so that the heat from your body doesn't steam them up. If you have ski goggles, sometimes people like to wear ski goggles. I find them a bit too much for myself, but especially if you wear glasses and you have a pair of prescription ski goggles, those can be really, really helpful as well. But glasses or eye protection is very important on those very, very cold days. But again, most of the time on a beautiful sunny day, just your sunglasses are fine.
Yeah, I do have a question and a comment from the chat here. I find mitts are best, but not too heavy or tight fitting. That's important as well. I tried Google fog up too much. I use sunglasses with yellow lenses. I guess that's for the eyewear. Yeah, eye protection.
Very same. I find the goggles.
That makes a lot more sense. I'm like, is this like a new Google Glass bike thing?
Yeah, it's a virtual reality thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's why I don't wear goggles myself, is that I find they fog up for me, but I do see lots of people out there now wearing them, so I guess some people like them.
Yeah, and not specifically related to gloves and things like that, but this is something that a lot of people on bikes kind of aren't sure about, especially in winter. They mentioned how do people feel about driving on sidewalks for winter commutes, and that's something I know we speak to quite often.
Yeah, so we're going to go into route planning shortly, and then we'll cover some of that stuff for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, basically everybody's is different as the bike they're riding and the person they are, right? And you have to do what works for you. So I'm basically just telling you what works for me, but you just have to figure out what works for you. So I am definitely, I am not a sporty person, but I have this amazing pair of sporty, clear glasses that I wear in winter. It's the sportiest thing I own. I feel like I should be an Iron Woman racer or something when I put them on, but they're great for keeping the wind off, and they're quite wraparound. Yellow is great too, because yellow, you can wear those into the lower light, which is great. Okay, so carrying cargo, I put this in here because it's a little different in winter. And what I really want to focus on are just, I'm assuming if you're here, you already ride a bike in the nice weather. And so these are just things that you need to sort of pay attention to in the less nice weather. Carrying cargo. So I really feel that keeping my center of gravity low helps me tremendously. I do it year round, to be honest, because I often am carrying quite a lot of stuff on my bicycle. But when your center of gravity is low, it's spreading the weight more evenly. And it really means that if your weight shifts, it's not as traumatic as if you're having a backpack on your back or having a basket up on your handlebars. So baskets are pretty much just, you know, put your pie in it, put a little purse in it, or maybe your lunch in there, but really almost no weight should be in your basket in the winter time, anytime. These panniers like this, or these baskets, these is my old bike, and these metal baskets, they were like, cars would stay so far away from me when I was on this bike. I think it was because they didn't want to scratch their paint on my rusty old baskets. So whatever, I took it. And just even having like a crate or whatever like this securely attached to a rack is okay too. If you do need to wear a backpack, and that's how you travel around, what you really need to do is make sure that that backpack is almost like you're going on a proper hike. You're going to really want it as tight as you can into your body. And if it has a waist enclosure, please do it up. And then actually move your body around. You want that backpack, you want to feel like a turtle. Like that backpack should not move off your back. It needs to almost be a part of you. Because if you need to come to an abrupt stop, you don't want that backpack pulling you off your bicycle. And you'll see when we go on in a sec that that's a thing that happens in winter. You have to be prepared for that. So let's just talk about a few of the skills that are really, and tips, I guess, that are really just helpful for keeping yourself safe and comfortable when riding year round. So you can see my friend Grant here, he's riding, this is about where we normally ride our bikes, about a meter from the curb. But this is a big pile of ice and gluck and schnuck and blah. We don't know what's going on under there. So we actually want to make the new sort of meter from the curb. This thing sort of becomes your new curb. It's really important any time of year to make sure that you are biking along, you're giving yourself enough space to move over. So if you're biking right along this snow ice line and somebody is coming too close to you, or you're starting to feel uncomfortable, you have nowhere to go. So it's really important that you're out here sort of a meter away from whatever the barrier is. You definitely, if this is softer snow, you don't even really want to be riding through puddles because there are really big potholes, as you know, in Ottawa. I think I just saw a stat that this year alone in the first quarter of Ottawa, the city fixed 19,000 potholes in March. Like there's a lot of potholes in this town. And if you're riding through a puddle, you don't know if there's nothing or one of those ones that shoots you straight down to the bottom of the earth, right? Like some of those things can be a foot deep. So really just stay on the stuff you can see if you can. And the other benefit of being a little further out, now, let's say he has his back light on, he's much more visible in this spot. So we're riding, you know, he doesn't really quite need to be taking a lane here, but he's a little further out. He's not mixing in with what might be happening on the sidewalk. That's very important, especially in busy urban environments where there might be a lot of action on the sidewalk. A car sometimes a cyclist can almost get lost in the pedestrians, in the visual. So that's why those lights are important, staying a good meter out, being predictable, riding in those straight lines, and avoiding those potholes, giving yourself space to maneuver either direction. So I rarely bike on days like this, but it does happen that you end up on days like this. Sometimes you go to work and it looks like this, and then you come home and it looks like this, because that's Ottawa. So this isn't for everyone. So the first thing you should know is you can get off and walk. If you don't want to ride your bike, the magical thing is we are also pedestrians walking bikes. So I give that advice a lot also to new cyclists who have infrastructure barriers, like they're afraid to bike over a bridge, or you have a place along the way that's stopping you from continuing on your journey. It's okay to walk your bike sometimes. I've been riding my bike for 43 years. I still get off and walk my bike sometimes. You don't need to be a hero. You just want to enjoy your bike ride. So that's the first one. That should actually be up at the top. Fluffy snow. So when we're talking kind of the under 5 centimeters of snow, that's actually pretty fun. I'm not going to lie. So that's just what he's kind of biking in right there. It's just started to snow. You can see that it's still warm. This isn't ice yet. That's a puddle. But you can't see what's going on under that snow. So biking in very thin, fluffy snow, in most cases, your tire's still going to be able to have traction right down to the asphalt. When you get into snow that's sort of more than 4 or 5 centimeters, that's when it's a slog. And it's a bit like biking in sand. If you've ever been biking along and you've hit a little patch of sand, you kind of end up a bit shifty. It takes some getting used to, and it's hard work, quite frankly, if you have to do it for 5 kilometers. So, you know, when you have a lot of snow, that's where the fat bike's really great, but that's great for city. You really want to just make sure that you're comfortable. And if you're not comfortable, get off and walk. And if you really just don't even want to get off and walk, I always bring a lock with me. And that way I'm always able to lock my bike up somewhere if I have to. So that I think when we had an office downtown, Fire Center, I think there were 2 days that I just left my bike at work because those were just like crazy blizzard days. And I was like, I am not biking 8 kilometers and 10 centimeters of snow. That sounds terrible. So just always give yourself a plan B. And then with ice. So if you are biking and you come across ice, you don't want to brake. That's really important. The best thing you can do is you're going to gear down into a nice, easy granny gear. You're going to keep pedaling and you're going to keep your speed and you're going to stay in a perfectly straight line, and you're not going to brake till you go over that ice. You really do have to approach ice with confidence and keep moving. If you try to brake on ice, your wheels are going to slip out. And if you go a little too slowly, you don't want to go so slow that you tip over and have to put your foot down, because then both you and your bike are going to fall over. So you really just want to kind of get in this groove of just being like, my bike can go over ice. Now, studded tires, they're your ticket to ice. I actually feel better biking across ice with my studded tires on than I do walking across ice in my boots. So if you can find some studded tires in this town, go after this meeting, because there is not very much out there in the world of studded tires. So they really will make a world of difference for going over ice. I wonder if my next picture is, well, this is just, this is what the roads usually look like. This is January on my street. So you can see there's snow on the road, but there's always this kind of cleared spot. There's lots. We have about 50 kilometers now of cleared infrastructure. I'll show you a map that shows that. But really start by biking on the beautiful days. Don't start in this. and just avoid that when you can, because it's not that fun. I mean, that's what they always put. I actually did a whole presentation. This is like my pet peeve. I'm going to go down in history screaming this. Like, this is a person biking in winter, but this is not winter biking. Okay. Like, winter biking is not about being a hero or getting out on these big blizzard days and wearing all these fancy things. Winter biking for people that are actually doing it regularly looks more like this. It's just wearing the clothes you're going to show up in for the most part. You got your glasses on. This is what I'm wearing. It must have been a really cold day because I'm wearing a down coat this day, but this is what actual winter biking looks like. And all of us who do this try to avoid this. This is newspaper fodder. This is what gets on, in the newspaper every year about, let's go talk to Crazy Harold because he's out on his bike in a blizzard. Harold, why are you out here in the blizzard? And that's what the world perceives as winter biking, but it's actually pretty beautiful and it's just cold sometimes. All right, these are my studded tires. You can see the little studs on them here, and those grip right into the ice, and they're amazing. If you only have budget or can only find one out in the world, you put your studded tire on your front wheel. Sounds weird because, we think it should be on the back, but actually on the back, the weight of your body is mostly on your back tire. It's kind of like putting the rocks in the back of the pickup truck, right? But the direction your bike is going to travel is guided by the front tire. So if you're only going to put one studded tire on, put it on your front. If you can afford to, put it on both. They'll change your life. They're so luxurious. They're not cheap though. Okay, so on my winter bike, literally the only thing I lock up are my tires because my tires cost more than the frame of my bike. Okay, so my bike's worth $50, but the tires on my bike are worth maybe $170 for both studded tires. They're not cheap, but they'll last you about 4 or 5 years if you tend to bike often and only use them in the winter. Like, you don't want to be biking around with your studded tires when there's no snow on the road, because it's like, it just grates down your studs. Another little trick you can do, whether or not you have studded tires or not, is lower the air pressure to the lower end of the PSI. So the PSI is found, a little range will be found on the sidewall here. And in the winter time specifically, you want to be on the lower end because you want your tires to be a bit softer, to have a bit more traction, to be able to grab into anything and everything. You're not racing. You don't need to have a high end of the PSI. It's not about efficiency. It's about comfort. It's also a much more comfortable ride. It almost acts like a bit of a shock absorber as we get into those more bumpy surfaces and bumpy roads of winter time. Make sure your brakes are working. That is really, really important because often we, might bike somewhere. We get there. In the meantime, our bike parts might have had some slush and guck from the road kind of jammed in there. And then if that freezes, nothing works. Your cables stop working, your brakes stop working, your gears stop working. It's kind of terrible. So here's my really high complicated maintenance tip. When I get to where I want to go, I pick up my bike and I go bang, 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 bang on the ground. And I simply get off as much of that snow and slush or whatever I've picked up along the way that's caught maybe under my fenders or into my brake pads or wherever off my chain and derailleur. Give it a good bang when you get to where you want to go. And then before you leave, just give your brakes. I don't care if your gears work, quite frankly. They're just nice to have. But your brakes are really, really important. It's more important to stop than to go. So please make sure your brakes are working before you head out. My other funny little weird tip I discovered is I had one of those brushes that take the snow off the front windshield of your car. and my cogs were all jammed up with slush, and this thing, the windshield wiper brush, fits perfectly in my cogs, like right back there. I could and I could get all my cogs cleaned up too. So that was nice. So maybe make that a dedicated version though, so you're not putting bike grease all over your windshield next time. For keeping your bike clean, you do want to clean and lube your chain a few times over the season to avoid rust and buildup. So now this one we could have a big debate about. I'm just inherently lazy. I am not a techie. I really don't spend more time cleaning my bike than riding my bike. I just want to make sure my bike's rideable. So especially if you have to bring your bike inside, you want to make sure you're cleaning and lubing that chain a lot, much more often than if you're able to keep your bike outside. So if you have a cold garage or a cold area that you can keep your bike in, that's ideal, because the less freeze thaw there is, the less opportunity there is for that salt to eat all your components and your chain. So when you want to clean and lube your chain, you want to use wet lube as opposed to dry lube. So that's just important. And you can buy a little tube of that at any bike shop. It'll last you years. You don't need a lot, but you need it. You need to do that quite regularly over the season. Otherwise, your chain really does get rusty pretty quickly. You can see here my chain is not, it's rusty, but it's lubed. So it's because it's an old beast of a thing, but this is probably the third or fourth year I use this bike as my winter bike. And the only reason it lasted that long is that I just kept this as clean-ish as I could and as lubed as I could. You can see snow can get all jammed up in here. These shocks, I don't think they ever really worked. But, you know, making sure my brakes were able to be clear of snow, that's just really important. Kind of just giving your bike that overall bang, cleaning up mostly the back business here. And then if you can actually keep your derailleur working for more than a season, you should be teaching this workshop, because mine works usually for like the first year of winter biking. And then eventually I get down to having like maybe 2 gears, just because things start rusting and things don't move as easily as they once did. Doesn't really matter. You'll see the routes are pretty flat for winter biking in Ottawa anyway. It doesn't even matter. Okay, are there any maintenance questions before we move on to route planning?
Not maintenance. There were just some comments. One person had studs just on the shoulders, I guess, of their wheel, so it's not constantly hitting, but if they do like have a little slip or something, it catches.
Yeah,
as well, they mentioned they have disc brakes and they stay dry. They tend to stay a lot drier than the brakes that you have here.
Yeah, yeah.
Also,
those disc brakes are great. And the thing with disc brakes is he's or she's exactly right. So that, you know, the cables you still have to make sure are okay, but there's just this teeny little part where the disc goes through, and that doesn't tend to get too gummed up with the snow and dirt, because there's really no real estate. It doesn't have as much open components, and where it's located on the bicycle tends to just stay a little cleaner. So yes, definitely disc brakes are really great.
Awesome. And there are some other comments or questions that aren't specifically related. We will get to them. There will be a portion at the end of the presentation as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to fire through a few slides about route planning, and then we'll just kind of open up the floor to share ideas. What works for you? I'm always really interested. Sounds like we have a couple people here anyway that already do some winter biking, and you know, share your best tips. I think that's the best thing about our bike community, really. Okay, so route planning. The winter snow maintenance policy is actually currently in finalization, so it hadn't been changed for something like 15 years, and we just worked on starting to change the timelines. But I think it's really important just to know what to expect. So once the snow starts falling, you know, the highway, the transitway, the major roads and arterials, the plows get out there. Once there's snow on the ground, they automatically start doing sidewalks and cycle lanes in the downtown core. So that winter cycling infrastructure has the same priority as sidewalks downtown, which is really great. Like, I was biking in Ottawa in 1989, and there was like me and 4 couriers, and like you never saw anybody. There was no plowed infrastructure. On my last commute home in winter, pre-COVID, I was biking home from the office, and I think I counted 60 people along Scott Street. Like, you have no idea how happy this makes me. I feel like, I hope I never have to do these workshops. I hope this just becomes normal, you know, but anyways. So it's really cool that we actually do have some winter maintained infrastructure here. You'll see we have a long way to go. Then we have secondary roads and minor collectors. So these are the ones that you kind of sometimes have to get to. If you live on a residential road, that's coming even after. Residential sidewalks come even after that. And then cleaning up the intersections and pedestrian crossings. So that's, you know, when you get to the end of the sidewalk and the snowplow from the road has made the big bulge in front of the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk guy goes, and they kind of have this battle. People literally go out with shovels to fix a lot of those. And bus stops come last, which kind of breaks my brain. Don't really understand that. But anyways, I really like to see that bumped up here a bit more. But the good news is that our cycling winter maintained infrastructure actually does have a pretty high priority. So where can you find out where that is? There are basically 2 really great resources. There's Geo Ottawa, and then we have Bike Ottawa, which is our advocacy organization, has this amazing mapping volunteers that have made a winter bike map as well. Asking colleagues, neighbors, friends, anyone that you know that winter bikes for great routes or things you should know is also a really, really great resource. People that do this year round basically want everyone to do this year round. This picture is my husband and another person. It was practically a winter biking traffic jam in my neighborhood last winter, so I had to take a picture. It was pretty great. You can see he rides a road bike. It's very skinny tires. He's all about, he feels like his skinny tires cuts through, but he's always riding on this kind of stuff. He doesn't have winter infrastructure to get to his work. So let's just have a quick peek at these 2 resources, because this one in particular is this golden treasure that lots of people don't know about that I just really like to share. So this is the City of Ottawa's mapping platform. You can find out about everything to do with the city. You can find out even the cycling plans, what's coming down the pipes. This is where I go to when people ask me questions. I go here. It's open. It belongs to the residents of Ottawa, and it's an amazing resource nobody knows exists. So if you Google Geo Ottawa, you have to go to this funny little symbol here, and that's the layers, and you have to zoom into your area. So when you first open this page, it's the whole city, that big heart-shaped city, you know, that 9,000 whatever it is square kilometers that we are. We're huge. So first thing you have to do is zone in on the area you want to look at. Otherwise, you really can't see any details. Then you want to go to cycling. Then you want to go to existing cycling. And then you want to go to winter maintained cycling. Okay, so you can look at some of the other things you can find in there. So this is what we currently have for winter maintained cycling here in Ottawa. Ideally, when you are looking at this map, you want to stick to orange. Orange is the Rolls Royce, okay? Orange is the off-street, that's a multi-use path, or it's a cycle track. It's not just a bike lane or a suggested route. So this is Scott Street, which is a great way to get downtown. This is the canal, both sides of the canal. This is the Trillium line. So that's the one that goes through behind Little Italy. This is Churchill. That's Byron. A little piece of St. Patrick up in here. The yellow part, this is an interesting one. So this is a bike lane. They put it in, and then the residents of this area were like, please, please, please plow it. So they did plow it. Our team went out there. It's not very well used. I think a lot of people maybe don't know that it's winter maintained. So winter cycling in Ottawa, if you live in an area where you can get to some of this orange stuff, is pretty great. If you live in Orleans or Canada or Barrhaven, your main routes are going to be residential roads. Okay, so you really want to ensure that you're not biking on, you know, that Innis Road bike lane in the winter time. That's just not a good idea. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be well plowed. So you really have to understand that your route might be much longer in the winter time than it is in the summertime. Okay, so I live like here-ish, and that's where my office was. So in the summer, I literally just went down Somerset Street. That was my commute to work. But in the winter time, I always went down to Scott and all the way along Scott, and then I came up O'Connor, and then I kind of backtracked a little to get into work. So it's really important to understand that the nicest route is not going to be your shortest route most of the time. But understanding this map exists is very helpful. Now you can see there's not much information about other stuff for winter maintenance on the official City of Ottawa website. But luckily, our good friends at Bike Ottawa have created this open source data map where they are also showing throughout the whole city what's plowed, not plowed, or unknown, which is like, please let me know what's happening here. This is just a screenshot, so I can't zoom in too much. So you can see what we were talking about before. There's the Scott Street one. It's all nicely plowed. That's the Trillium line we were talking that runs behind Little Italy. This is Island Park Drive. And yes, it's plowed, but it's solidly meh to bike on in winter. Like on a beautiful day, it's nice, but the potholes are quite big along there. That's where it's nice to talk to a person that actually bikes in winter. Like if Doug there, just picking on you because I can see your face. If Doug was like, John, I'm thinking of going to this place. Should I take Island Park Drive? I'd be like, no, don't take Island Park Drive. Where are you coming from? And I would probably say, like, take some of these side streets, because it's better to be in the middle of one of these side streets than dealing with the potholes and traffic on a okay-ish plowed road. So I always look at maps like this, and I always think to myself, when we say we don't have bike infrastructure, you also have to remember that all those beautiful side streets, they're lovely to bike on, right? So really make sure that you're talking to people in your community for nice routes. Byron's great to bike on. Scott's great to bike on. That's great. Like a lot of this stuff's really wonderful to bike on, but there are just a few things where I would be like, meh, take a different one. Come down Harmer Street and hang over this way and go down that way till you get to this. You know, like there's always sort of plan Bs in there. It's a good route to play around in. I don't know why it was in dark mode, so it just looks cool, I guess. That's my last slide. So the other thing I would say is, yeah.
We have a couple of just related questions if you're going into something else.
Well, this is really my last thing. I was just going to say, like, I really am, as Stefan knows, a keener, and I'm always willing to help or help people with route planning. So really, you can always email me if you think of a question you forgot to ask later. Stefan will put my email in there, and I'm always happy to help as best I can, or at least point you in the right direction of someone that can help. I think I'll just do my very last slide, which is this one. So please, please, please harass your workplace, harass the businesses you go to, and talk to them and ask them to support year-round cycling. Ask the places you love to shop to clear the snow from the bike racks out front of their businesses. Ask your employer to provide a space for you to change and keep your wet clothes. Have a place to hang up your wet clothes. It's really awful to have to put on wet clothes at the end of a day. You know, it's one thing when you get to go home and dump it all in a corner. And talk to other people about it, and you know, start small. Bike on those beautiful days, and just go out and enjoy this beautiful city we live in all winter long too. So,
Leanna asked, do paths that run through parks get cleared?
not all of them. So typically no, which is sad, but some do. So that's where this map's pretty helpful, and the other map is pretty helpful. Do they have the one that I wish that I every year bug the city about is this one. Of course, soon we're going to have a hospital on top of it, but this is the one that links the end of Sherwood to Dow's Lake, and that I use that little piece through the park like once a week, and it is not plowed. It is kind of like citizen plowed. There's definitely this very hard desire line of bike tracks and walking tracks through there, but it's not officially plowed. You can see little things like this park. These are parks here. He's not plowed. So this is a really good map to zoom in on in your own neighborhood, and you'll be able to see if something's plowed or not.
Awesome. You kind of answered this somewhat. What about winter maintained cycling infrastructure in a hall? Does anyone know where to find this? You can see just on the map you have there, there's a little bit.
Yeah, so we do have a little bit on this nice map put together by Bike Ottawa. I could have scrolled a bit further out, but I just wanted to kind of compare apples to apples. So you can see like our river pathways just aren't plowed. They're really being used now for active transportation. Fat biking is awesome along there. If you have a fat bike and you want to commute, that's your commuter right here. Boop, or boop, it's amazing. Cross-country skiing, of course, as well. You can see some things are plowed. The Alexandra Bridge is plowed. Pieces are plowed. It's pretty disjointed up there, though.
Exactly, yeah. All right, so we had a few other things here. Doug shared a great resource for putting your prescription into eyewear if that's needed for cycling eyewear. Let's see. This is actually, yep.
Sorry, on that note, one of the really handy things about those prescription inserts is it keeps your prescription eyewear out from your face because it's really at the edge of the goggle. And the beauty of it is they don't fog up anywhere near as much as normal. So I found them very, very handy. I use them for actually shoveling snow because they're so handy. So.
Amazing.
Yeah. Did you share that link with Stefan in the chat there?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Doug put it into the chat there.
They're not cheap, just to be clear. But if you have a really good benefits program, it'll at least reduce the cost. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's awesome that exists. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also shared the Geo Ottawa and Bike Ottawa maps links there. So if you were curious about those, you can look into those as well. This other question was actually really interesting. What do you find that you need 2 panniers to keep balanced? This person has just the one and is generally fine. But if it's loaded up, there's obviously there'll be a bit of shift of balance there. Jen, I know you have some panniers. You can speak to that.
I am all panniers all the time. So generally I like having 2 panniers because it's kind of like you can carry more stuff, you know, but you also you are able then to balance the weight a little bit better. If you do have only 1 pannier, the one thing it sounds silly, but even when you're packing your pannier, make sure you have your heaviest stuff at the bottom. Like even just that little foot and putting something heavy at the top, especially if you don't have the counterweight of the other pannier. You'll find when you're biking on anything that's not solid, so let's pretend that's a little bit of snow, a little bit of ice, a little bit of sand, even through a big puddle sometimes, your bike is, you know, kind of attached to you, and it's a bit of a balancing act sometimes, and those little shifts in weight can really make a difference. And it's not like it's on us, it's not like it's attached to our body, right? So when it changes, when this time you're going to get on your bike's going to feel like this, and the next time you get on your bike's going to feel like that. I think that consistency is the main thing. So if you have one pannier and you're used to one pannier and you're used to always kind of carrying the same stuff in your one pannier, your body kind of knows how to groove with that. The challenge would be if you have one pannier and then the next time you wear a backpack and then the next time you wear two panniers, it's kind of like you have to relearn that balance each and every time. So if you only have one pannier and you're carrying the same stuff in it all the time, you're probably fine. If you're grocery shopping or something though, I'd kind of stick with two panniers if you can.
Awesome. This person had just mentioned they try to stay off the roads as much as possible, stay away from traffic. It's all dependent on, I guess, your comfortability level, and you'd mentioned just maybe sticking to, you know, smaller streets. The same person asked about the they just reiterated about the using the sidewalks that we wanted to get back to.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I really have to out loud say, for the record, that riding on the sidewalk is illegal by every size and every age person, every size bicycle. They used to have a 26-inch tire rule, but now it's just like riding on the sidewalk is illegal in Ottawa. Now, I have to say that out loud, but also common sense does prevail, right? So like we don't see 3-year-olds riding down Gladstone Street, right? So there are exceptions, and common sense and safety must be taken into consideration. So I think if you choose to ride on the sidewalk, there's some really, really important things you need to know. You always want to be riding the same direction as traffic is going, and that's a safety issue. That's because cars backing out of driveways are looking for cars and traffic coming from the direction they expect them to be coming. And if you're coming up the sidewalk the opposite way, you are not expected there, and you're moving much more quickly than a pedestrian. So for safety reasons, if you choose to walk on the sidewalk, please go the direction of traffic. If it's a sidewalk that's used by a lot of pedestrians, you should really be getting off your bike and walking on that section of sidewalk. I really want to make it clear that I'm a big fan of all types of active transportation and strongly believe that pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, everybody needs access to safe and comfortable infrastructure to get around our city. And biking on sidewalks causes a great amount of stress and safety concerns for a lot of people. So common sense, you know, don't ride on the sidewalk on a place where there is pedestrians. Now let's look at a place more like, I'm just trying to think of a good example, like a place that I would say is a gray area is Riverside. So if you're going along Mooney's Bay, I can't zoom in very well. There's a sidewalk that goes along Mooney's Bay or along MacArthur, and it's a very busy road and it's not well plowed, and nobody is walking out there in the wintertime, honestly. Like there are no people walking there. You know, I would say if you're going to ride on the sidewalk, that kind of makes sense, but be prepared to stop, like fully stop if you're coming up to somebody, but also know that it's actually the law that you're not allowed to be there. So you really have to be respectful, do what's safe. If ever you feel like your safety is in jeopardy, definitely get yourself up onto the sidewalk and at least walk your bike for that section. That's my answer. I'm not a fan of biking on sidewalks. I'm a big fan of finding longer routes that are safe and comfortable. But I also know there's places in Ottawa that you seriously just cannot get to A to B without a section being sidewalk. Yeah. Doug?
Yep.
So the one thing that I was going to mention, as you were mentioning about like longer routes are sometimes better. If you're starting this, my biggest advice is on a non-work day, go fact find and find something that makes you happy getting from there to back, because the worst thing that can happen is you do it on a work day and then you're stressed out that you're going to be late, and then it just destroys the experience.
Yeah.
But on a second note, the one thing that I think we've talked about before on these things, and it's Jen, seriously, it's great to see you, even if it's on camera. And so it's been far too long. But for people that don't have access to a hose to actually like hose down their bike, and again, just to be clear, if you're going to water down your bike to clean it, it needs to dry and you need to relube everything, because you're just going to make it worse otherwise. But if you don't have access to a hose, you can buy one of those garden sprayers. And then that way you can fill it up inside your condo and then take it down to your bike, and then make sure that you bring it into the garage, and then make sure that either you wipe it all down and dry it off that way and then relube it. Or if you're one of those people that brings it inside, because not everyone can bring it inside and throw it in their shower, which we all know that some people do. But I'm definitely not one of those people, but I'm a huge fan of the garden sprayer thing, with the understanding that you really have to dry everything down and then relube everything shortly thereafter. So
yeah, and that's a great suggestion, Doug. And I often forget, like my bike just sits outside in a shed all winter, like an open shed. It's basically, I'm a farm girl, so I built myself a drive shed with a bike rack in it. Okay, so that's what I have. But it never comes in my house, and I never spray it until I kind of do those cleaners. But you're absolutely right. If you live in a condo or you need to bring your bike in, you do need to keep it much cleaner. I love that idea of the garden sprayer. That's like going in my notes now. And you're absolutely right also about going out. And I would say even practicing, don't start by your commute to work. Go to a friend's house, get bedazzled. They're not going to be like, oh my gosh, you biked here? And you're like, yes, I did. And then you're going to want to do it again and go a little further. So really, yeah, bike in your neighborhood first, get used to it, and then take on the route and take it on a day you don't have to work.
And then on the fat bike note, Jen, because everyone just thinks the end all and be all. And again, just to be clear, because you know that I have that pink fat bike.
You have a fat bike. I know.
But it is slow as molasses in January.
Yeah.
And it's just for fun. It truly isn't an ideal long distance commuting thing, because I literally commute in from Elmer, which obviously I haven't since March of 2020 because I've been working from home. But that's the other thing that everyone needs to remember is it's going to be a much more slower than it was during the summertime for you to be cycling into wherever you're going.
Yeah, my commute was because we sold our building. I don't know if you know that about us, but anyway, my commute was 25 minutes, and in the winter it was 45 minutes, so it was almost double. Any other questions, Stefan? I can see we're kind of wrapping up time or overtime here.
Yeah, just wrapping up. One person mentioned they saw the OC Transpo buses all have bike racks on the front now as well, which is great. They all have them, so you don't have to worry about if they, will they, won't they, is the bus, they all have them now, so that's great.
So
they will be taken off during the winter months, and I think that's salt related as well. Unfortunately, we have a lot of salt in Ottawa. And the last was just mentioning one person didn't really feel safe on the bike lanes. Again, it's finding what you're comfortable with and then going with that. I love biking in bike lanes, and I live downtown though, so it's a little, we have a little more infrastructure available right in the center, but it's finding what you're comfortable with and going with that for sure.
And I'm just gonna also say, if you are not getting the snow clearing that you expect and snow is not being cleared off, along a place that you expected it should be, then it's really a great idea to call, email, write your city councillor and let them know. The only reason any of this winter infrastructure is here is because people asked for it. And it is a chicken and egg problem. We have all these people that want a winter bike, but they're looking for infrastructure. And then we have not a lot of infrastructure going in because we don't have enough people saying they want a winter bike. So it is a chicken and egg. So if you're interested in winter biking and you have an infrastructure barrier, please, please bring it up with your city councillor, and you would be amazed at the impact your voice has in our city.
Yeah, and just the one last follow-up of the when the racks actually get taken off. Oh, Doug, you beat me to it. It's end of October, start of November, and I believe it's till, is it April, March, April?
They usually start putting them on again in April. Yeah, and it has to do with salt maintenance and the need for it to be able to be pulled down by the person, and they can't have like that getting all frozen and gummed up. So every other winter city I know of has their rack and roll usually throughout the year. I'm often asking and advocating for that. So I'm not quite sure, but I harass them a lot about that. Because if Montreal can do it, we can do it. That's what I feel. So anyways, they're on all the buses now. So that's pushed in the right direction anyway. Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you all very, very much for coming today. I really am super thrilled when I see new faces that are interested in biking a little longer. Truly, truly, if you have a question that we didn't address today, just email and we'll do our best to help you out. So thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you out there. Now I just need places to go. I literally bike like 7 kilometers to go to my grocery store now that's 2 blocks away just to have a bike ride. Anyway, I need more places to ride my bike to. I miss my commute a lot. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Thanks. I saw that Donald put his address in the chat. Did you grab that?
Oh, it did? Okay. No, I didn't.
Oh, he sent it just to me. I see it here. Just don't
Okay.
leave. I'm
Yep.
just gonna write it here. His name is Donald Mac.